Now to Brian Dunn, managing partner of the Cochran Firm California. Brian, welcome. So defense attorney Eric Nelson there. Did he miss an opportunity to change Chauvin's image potentially with the jury after all the video evidence and pertinent testimony? Or do you think he believes that he successfully created reasonable doubt? What's your observation on that?
Well, it's always an honor to be with you, Alex, and that's such a good question for so many reasons. And I think one of the things that really moved me about the colloquy that we saw was that between the attorney and the defendant, he said, we've gone over this back and forth a few times, haven't we? And they kind of had a moment where they exchanged a knowing glance, like, yes, we have. I think that in terms of strategy, it was the right decision. I think that you always have to look in terms of what is going to be the most intelligent move under the circumstances. And I think that the idea of Chauvin testifying had much more of a risk because there's so many things that you can't prepare for. For example, if he lost his temper up there, that could really, really change the future of the case for him.
Yeah, no, you make a very good point there. Give me your assessment, Brian, of what you think will be a critical point from each side in the upcoming closing arguments. What points do you think need to be made?
Well, for the prosecution, they just have to have the mantra, keep it simple. Keep it simple, rely on your common sense. Look at the video, focus on the video, understand that if there is something that is being told to you that runs afoul with your sense of right and wrong, that runs afoul with your common sense, don't trust it. And from the defense, their best witness was this doctor, this medical witness. And I think that the best chance that they have to try to create some reasonable doubt is to say, look, the science on this issue is far from being certain. This is a man's life that we're talking about. It's his future. It's his liberty. Let's take a hard look at whether or not these charges have absolutely been proven. But I do think it's favoring the prosecution strongly at this point.
You know, it's interesting. I'm listening to you, and to me, you're echoing exactly what the prosecution said in their opening arguments. I mean, you're basically saying, we're coming full circle again. We're going to tell you what we told you at the beginning. Right. You're going to do this again. Good point there. With regard to an advantage from either side going into next week, I know you said it's been looking good for the prosecution. I think you're not alone in that sentiment because they put on a very, very powerful case there.
Absolutely.
But it only takes one person to throw a monkey wrench, right? Reasonable doubt.
It does. It does, Alex. And, you know, there's been so many studies on this. And, yeah, we have to really get familiar with the nature of the knowledge as it relates to the way that juries operate and the way that they work. And in the information age, things have changed. Most really expert jury analysts say that the jury kind of has a very strong leaning as to how they're going to vote before the closing arguments even begin. And a lot of folks are now saying that the attorneys don't really change the minds of the jurors so much as they arm the jurors with evidence, with arguments that they can make when they get back there. They say that a juror can change the mind of another juror at this point, but the attorney's ability to sway opinion has become progressively less as the jury has taken in the evidence.
So taking what you've just said, Brian, when you think about the jury, when they're sequestered and then they start deliberating, what kind of an edge do you give either side? I mean, I know it's difficult to read the tea leaves, read body language, but as you listen to the compelling cases made to varying degrees on both sides, what is that going to be like in the deliberation room? Do you think that'll be largely sided on one side and there may be a few on the other? Will it be evenly distributed? What's your thought on that?
Alex, I don't know if you've been a lawyer in this life, but you are basically speaking to the heart of every lawyer right now in terms of what they're going through in preparing for this final day. And what I've found in my 26 years is that you got to keep it simple. And you get into trouble when you start trying to give them too much in too short of an amount of time. You have to keep the points simple because there's going to be a few people that are going to see things that the rest of the people don't see back there. And for the attorney to put the pressure on themselves to say, I have to get every little point out in this closing argument, that tends to not work as much as the attorney may think that it would.
Well, I'll just say I think I'm a litigator in my soul, which is why I like asking questions on television.
I think so too, Alex. I do think so too.
Let me ask you, Brian, though, about this, because what this is doing, this particular trial, is shining a light on police tactics, particularly in minority communities. Just this last week, we are seeing once again the heartbreaking police body cam videos. We have Daunte Wright as well as Adam Toledo. What went through your mind when you watched how those incidents unfolded?
Well, I look at it in terms of how they approach the situation. And tactics are something that people don't really talk about. People talk about the human reality of the murder, the homicide, the act of taking life, the hail of gunfire. But very few people really understand that it never should have gotten to that point in the first place. A shooting is like a set of dominoes. And if you could just imagine all 10 of those have to fall in exactly the right order for the shooting to happen. When we look at the shooting in Chicago, the officer never should have been chasing him by himself down a situation where he knew that he might be armed, because that creates a tripwire where just a sudden movement can startle or create anxiety that results in the loss of life. There's no harm in waiting, in calling for backup, in slowing things down. A lot of these officer-involved shootings happen because you have an officer that has placed himself in a position of peril. And what his state of mind is anybody's guess. But when you do a foot pursuit by yourself and you're going down blind alleys at night and it's just you and this other person, the advantage of the law enforcement officer has been taken away dramatically. And it's just one-on-one then, and he can have a situation where he could see something that doesn't exist. And if there's even the slightest bit of uncertainty, he's going to err on the side of using deadly force. And my position, Alex, is that he never should have been in that situation in the first place.
Yeah, well put, Brian Dunn. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you all.
Coming up.